Kia ora na whakarowhalahi atu māloi le lei ni Sambula, taloha ni, taloha koe kam na Māori, halo le keta wantau karaki nako mai, halo nem belong, no e Māori, mālo soifua, maua, malelangi e mama, and on behalf of the Ministry for Pacific Peoples, a very warm welcome to the second of our 3 Wellbeing Budget Pacific Aotearoa Rebuilding Together panels this evening, with a focus on our Pasifika youth. Before we continue, we invite now Pastor Essendon Tuitupo from the Faith City Church in Auckland to open our evening in prayer. Mara o pito, Pastor Essendon.
Thanks, Brian. Let's pray. Father, we thank you, Lord, and we remember, Lord, that your word says in 1 Thessalonians about works of faith and labours of love, Father God. And we thank you, Lord, for those who are gathered around this table to talk this evening and to discuss, but also, Lord, to build around our works of faith, Lord, and around the labours of love, to ensure that our communities are thriving, to ensure our communities and especially our young people, Lord, have a hope in the future. So we thank you, Father, for this time. We ask that you bless it. In the mighty name of Jesus, we say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Essendon Tuitupo from Faith City Church. You won't be staying with us for the remainder of our panel this evening, but thank you so much again. And I'm pretty confident that all our panelists did have their eyes closed during the opening prayer. Thank you so much. The Wellbeing Budget Rebuilding Together was announced by the government on the 14th of May. As part of this year's budget, a $195 million package was announced to support Pasifika through COVID-19 recovery to fund a number of Pacific-focused initiatives. In that, this evening we have assembled an amazing group of panelists. Half are amazing Pasifika youth leaders, and the other half were once youth. What I'm going to do before we hand over to the Minister for Pacific Peoples for opening remarks and introductions of his ministerial colleagues is give you a rundown of the next hour and a very special housekeeping rule, a clue this will not apply to our youth panelists. After opening remarks from the Minister and introductions of our government ministers, we'll then introduce our wonderful Pasifika youth leaders. This will be followed by a Q&A, which our Pasifika youth leaders will put questions to the government ministers on the wellbeing budget. Closing remarks from our ministers before we bring our evening to a close. At this time, also, we welcome our online viewers. Your questions and feedback also this evening via our comment section on the 531PI Facebook page. Youth, please share. It's not for the likes this evening, but the more you engage, I assure you it will be lit this evening. Now, part of my role this evening as facilitator is timekeeping. And without wanting to jeopardize my funding application for a new YouTube channel titled Maasangala, Why Do I Have to Give All My Pay to My Parents Every Week? Government ministers this evening, like my school C, maths exam in 1986 at the legendary Aotea College. Short and sweet, concise and to the point, just taking into account the number of panelists this evening and, of course, wanting to make the most of our time with our wonderful Pasifika leaders. To help with this, I might employ Zoom technology. So, ministers, if you see this icon appear, that is just an encouragement for you, maybe just to wrap up your thoughts so that we can continue, okay? And without wanting to labour the point any further, to quote the Minister for Pacific Peoples himself, verbatim from Tuli take flight of funerals across the country last year, when you smell the pork, keep it short. Or in this instance, when you see the thumb, it's about time you were done. With that, I would now like to welcome the Minister for Pacific Peoples, the Honourable Aupito Toi Suru Suru Tōwhai Sua William Seal. Awhawhai tere lava, lau awhionga, Minister.
Brian, I can't smell any pork where I'm at. So, look, can I just say that Brian has given all of our traditional greetings from the 9 Pacific languages, and given that Pastor Essendon has offered up prayer, all protocols have been performed. Can I then say, on behalf of Minister Grant Robertson, Minister Carmel Cipollone, Minister Jenny Salesa, Minister Poto Williams, and our Pacific Caucus colleagues, 2 of them are not here, Chris Fafoi and Anahila Kanoata Suisuki, simply acknowledge and thank you for your time. And I want to thank the panelists for making your time available here tonight. And I do want you to make good use of it with the Minister of Finance available here tonight with us. By way of introducing him, let me just go back a bit and just say, when we came back in government in 2017, Grant is the person that led our fiscal policy and drove that. And the government picked up on his leadership by simply saying that as a new government, we would transform New Zealand economy, our public service, in the way that we would work together. And the first budget that Grant introduced in 2017 was about laying foundation, and Pacific peoples benefited from the affordable and easy access to education, to health and housing, the families package, obviously, and also the lifting of the minimum wage. In last year's first Wellbeing Budget, Grant, in addition to, there were 5 priorities, but one of those priorities was about lifting Māori and Pacifica skills and well-being. And we were delighted by that because it meant that it recognized that we could provide some targeted support to lift Pacific well-being. And we used the feedback from many of your peers, maybe yourselves, and throughout the country, and captured people's aspiration, which we then included in a document that the Ministry of Pacific Peoples developed called the Pacific Aotearoa Lalanga 4 Goals. And that's what we approach Grant with, about here's our Pacific's plan, our Pacific People's plan, our vision, here are our goals. We need to be able to fund that. And so he did. And last year's Pacific Wellbeing Budget, unprecedented amount was allocated. And again, in this year, despite COVID-19, we continue to use that template to approach Grant and say, in our response and the recovery, here's the template that we want to be able to follow. And so I do want to thank you, Grant, because you've been with us in all of these meetings in 2018 budget, 2019 budget, and obviously today, because of technology and the platforms that are available to us, we thought we'd take a chance and go online and do these post-budget in this manner. So without further ado, I'm just going to invite you for the remainder of the time. Unless any of my colleagues want to specifically raise any part of the budget, the Pacific package, I think we can do that with the questions that come forward from the panelists. Whawhai.
Oh, whawhai tele lava, Malo. Thank you, Aupito, for your kind words of introduction, and also Brian and Pastor Essendon as well for welcoming us here today. It is great to be able to use this technology to do this. I have really enjoyed the occasions I've had when I've gone around the country with Aupito and others talking about what we're doing with the Pacifica community, but it kind of feels right in these times to be doing a Zooey and actually having the opportunity to come together this way. before I talk about the budget, I want to do something that I think is really important at the moment, and that's on behalf of the government to say thank you to all of you, because it's only through the efforts of our famous team of 5 million that we've got ourselves in a position in New Zealand to get control of this COVID-19 virus. It's really been a team effort. Someone was joking with me the other day that they're going to put works well in large groups on their CV now, that they're part of this team of 5 million. And it has been an awesome, awesome effort. When we look around the world, we're actually incredibly privileged with the position we now find ourselves in. Lots of other countries are facing ongoing restrictions in terms of movement, in terms of the economy, and also obviously the continuing health impacts of COVID-19. So we stand here today in a really privileged position. It's also an opportunity to acknowledge the 22 lives that were lost to COVID-19 and the family and friends of those people who have suffered that loss in the midst of this global crisis. It's a very difficult time. So to all of those people, haere atu rā. For me, when my job as the Minister of Finance, a big part of that job every year is to put together the budget. And as Opito says, we've had the budgets. They were a trilogy. That was the idea. It was going to be the Return of the King. No, it wasn't this year, but it's ultimately been about building on those foundations. And so we've done a lot of work to prepare for this budget. And then COVID-19 arrived. And like a lot of people and a lot of organizations and businesses around the country, we basically had to put our plans to one side and put all of our effort into supporting New Zealanders to get through COVID-19. And from really early days in the pandemic arriving, we set up a 3-point plan. And that was to respond, to recover, and to rebuild. And so the response phase is the one that the team of 5 million's been a big part of. And our health response, I think, has been awesome. But a big part of that response phase was also making sure that we cushioned the blow of this big impact on us. And that's been through schemes which you would have heard about, like the wage subsidy scheme, which has supported about 1.6 million New Zealanders to be able to stay in their jobs through the 12 weeks that we've had. And that's been an amazing thing to be able to be part of that. It's $11 billion. And when you use words like billion and million, they get a bit lost. But, you know, that's $11,000 million that we have been able to pay out to keep people in their jobs and support people to look after their family. As another part of that early response, we knew that it would be those who are the most vulnerable in our communities who'd be affected. And so we put in place a number of initiatives, including lifting all benefits by $25 per week, doubling the winter energy payment that goes to our low-income people and our elderly as well, just to make sure that people had some income to support themselves through that response phase, and a host of other things that we did to help provide support in our communities and right across the country. But the budget's come along as a chance to do phases 2 and 3 in a way that we've never ever contemplated before, the recovery and the rebuild. And that's had a huge focus on jobs and on work, because while the health crisis is one that we've got on top of, the economic impacts are going to be with us for a significant time to come. And so in an effort to make sure that we reduce as much as possible the number of people who do lose their jobs, the focus in the budget was on helping people stay in work. And that includes through the extension of that wage subsidy scheme to carry on for another 8 weeks for a lot of businesses, but also a push into job creation. And for us, we know the impact of people either not getting into work or being out of work. And so we wanted to make sure we limited that damage. That's across the board that we've made, put in place initiatives like that. And significant in the $195 million package that Brian mentioned at the start that was targeted for Pacific peoples. We've put investment into an area that I know for young people is going to be critical over the next few years, and that is around training, education, and getting new skills. And a big part of that, and it's a $1.6 billion package, the biggest we have ever seen to support training and education in New Zealand, is around making it much more easy to access those opportunities. So we've got apprenticeships that are now free across the board to everybody. We've got subsidised and free trade training in areas ranging from construction and manufacturing, and all the way through to community care, people working in mental health and addiction services. All of those areas from the 1st of July will be available for people for free to get in and do that training and develop those skills. We've got targeted versions of those programs for the Pacific community. We've got the Toloa program, which is about getting young Pacific people into the STEM subjects, into science and technology, engineering and maths, and seeing that roll out across the country. We've got Tupu Aotearoa, which is a program that helps young people get into those training courses and programs and stay there. And then one that I'm really excited about is the Auckland Pacific Skills Shift, which is a project building on the amazing work of the Southern Initiative around giving people the opportunity to just get in to the first bit of learning. Because we know that there are big barriers to people if you haven't enjoyed your time at school or you haven't been able to succeed in the way that you want. Going into a big tertiary institution sometimes doesn't actually work for people. So the Skills Shift Initiative is actually just about what we call micro credentials, just building up those programs bit by bit, course by course, to give people the skills and the confidence that they need. And that's a brand new program that's been funded through the budget this way. So there's heaps of other programs too, which we can talk about, but that focus on skills and giving people opportunity to get into work and to retrain as well is really hugely important as part of this budget. Alongside that, and all of the work that we're doing in industries like tourism, which has been really affected, and right across the board, we also know that this has had a massive social impact. And so there is funding available, and Minister Sepuloni is on the call through the Ministry of Social Development to support our community groups. And that means our youth groups. It also means churches and others who provide our social services to be able to get access to funding to support maybe what they've lost through COVID-19, but also to be providing that. We've expanded our food and schools program, which was going just to 8,000 of our most vulnerable young people. Now we'll go to 200,000, and that will mean that they will get that lunch in their belly. And we know that not only do people who are fed well learn better, we also know from Parliament that you behave better if you've had lunch as well. And so it's important that we do that across the board for all of our young people as well. So this is a 1 in 100 year crisis. Nowhere in our history has there been a playbook written for how we manage this. So we've gone on a lot of instinct and on our values, and our values are to protect people. So we're investing a huge amount of money in this, and we are borrowing that as a government on behalf of the people of New Zealand. We can afford to do that because we've been careful in the way we've managed our money over the last few years. And we talk about saving for a rainy day. Well, the rainy day's arrived, and we've put the umbrella up to protect our people. It's the right thing to do to help people get through this period, and we're going to come out the other side strong, and we are going to come out the other side united. So thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. This is a great chance to hear from our young people about their questions, and so I'll leave it there unless any of my colleagues want to fill in, but thank you again. Whawhatai tele lava.
Whawhatai tele lava, the Minister for Finance, the Honourable Grant Robertson, and introducing our other ministers joining us this evening. We have the Associate Minister for Education, the Honourable Jenny Sa'alesa, Minister for Social Development, the Honourable Carmel Sepuloni, and Minister for Community and Voluntary Sector, the Honourable Poto Williams. Thank you, Ministers. If there's no further remarks or maybe just a quick opening, we'll get straight into introductions of our amazing youth Pasifika leaders and then the Q&A. All good? Okay, then. Let's introduce the incredible Pasifika youth leaders. Firstly, Arizona Ledger. Hands up, Arizona. Yay. Arizona is of a tangata whenua and tangata Pasifika descent. She recently travelled to Japan as the only Indigenous delegate at the Girl 20 conference. She's delivered a TEDx Youth Talk, was a recipient of a 2015 Sunpix Award, and she was also recently a Miss FQ Influencer finalist. Thank you so much, Arizona. Cameron Young, kia ora, kia ora. Youngest of 6 children and grew up in Hawke's Bay. 2019 was a head boy of Karamu High School and is now studying a Bachelor of Science at the University of Otago, majoring in anatomy and minoring in Pacific Island Studies. Thank you, Meitaki Ma'ata. Fredwin Kisona. Fredwin, yes, thank you. Fredwin is of Tokelau descent, a research associate at ICOR, whose main function is to identify excellent leaders to help organisations thrive. Former head boy of Aotea College, Porirua's most prestigious educational facility of higher learning, where world changes originate. Fredwin is also the former president of the Victoria University Tokelau Student Association. Maloni, thank you. E te roa, Rafaele, e te roa, a wave there, dear, yay. E te roa is of Samoan descent. She completed a bachelor's degree in computer and information science, majoring in software development. E te roa founded a STEM academy at Auckland University of Technology and has mentored many Pasifika students through Oceania Leadership Network, ONG Tech, South Auckland STEM and Schools. Thank you, e te roa. And finally, a tupo, a veiongo. Yay, Bula, can we get a wave, or did you already? Yay, Bula Ratu. Born and raised in Fiji, Tupou is currently studying accounting at Massey University in Palmerston North. Tupou won the Deloitte Commercial and Corporate category at the 2019 Prime Minister's Pacific Youth Awards in just his second year of study. Tupou has achieved academic success, receiving a Certificate of Excellence in Intermediate Financial Accounting. Thank you once again to all our Pasifika leaders this evening for joining us. This evening, you represent our Pasifika youth from across the Pasifika diaspora in New Zealand. And as I briefed you last night, don't be shy, go Hundies. As long as it's done with respect, then that's all good. Our first question, Arizona, to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and Salofa to our ministers. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And to everyone who is tuned in right now, man, this is honestly, I've spent the whole day thinking about this question. I've been so nervous. I think it's more so because these opportunities, I never got to see these opportunities growing up, got to see my young people getting to talk with our ministers like this. So I really do mean it when I say thank you for this opportunity. And I ask that you help me learn about this budget because I've been looking at it for the past 48 hours and it's the first time I've ever seen it in my life. So I really do say thank you, but also ask that as I ask this question that it is kept in mind that a lot of us have never really seen this before. So this is definitely a first and I appreciate the training wheels with this this experience. So I guess for me, just to start us off on behalf of our panel, I really want to look towards Te Tiriti and towards our human rights. And I'd really like to ask, can we trust that Te Tiriti or Waitangi and our human rights were constantly at the forefront of the decisions being made regarding this budget? And if so, what part of the budget aims to address our young people's concern regarding racism and negative stereotypes, as highlighted in Goal 4 of Lalanga Fo? I ask this because that was the first thing I searched through our budget speech and our summary of initiatives, and there is actually no return of any word find around racism, discrimination, or stereotypes. So now we're putting the question your way.
Maybe if we can begin with the Minister for Pacific Peoples, Minister Alpito.
I mean, yeah, it's quite interesting. You've hit on something that a lot of our young people are now starting to acknowledge and recognize. And there is a search for what do we do? What's our response, our Pacific Aotearoa response? And I can say to you with confidence that the Treaty of Waitangi is absolutely important to this government. It is vocalized very well by a strong Māori caucus and supported by all of us in government here. There is no one that I'm aware of on the government side that will ever challenge the value and the importance of Treaty of Waitangi in all that we do. That's the first thing. Second thing I'd say to you is that it's now going on 3 years when the Human Rights Commission put out a program called Give Nothing to Racism. So it's almost, that sits under the justice portfolio, which Andrew Little has delegation for. But the Human Rights Commission started that program almost 3 years ago, the first phase. This year we'll go into the second phase of Give Nothing to Racism. And I suppose our Pacific communities have an opportunity to be part of that. Or what I would say is the youth group that the Ministry of Pacific Peoples have put together, I would look to you for some leadership on what is the way for us to be promoting the challenges that you see and promoting how do we look at eliminating racism going forward. that's my contribution. I don't know if the others may want to make a contribution to that.
If I can add to that, please, Brian. So one of the things that we did last year, Arizona, is we went around the community for kōrero mā tauranga. I did that for Pacific as well as ethnic communities, and the Honourable Kelvin Davis did the same thing for Māori. You would know that the budget this year has over $900 million specifically invested for Māori. Quite a lot of that goes to Kohanga Reo, and some of it in his education portfolio, the Honourable Kelvin Davis, is also to address, racism. So you won't necessarily see the term in the budget document, but I can tell you, as Associate Minister of Education, in this budget, there's over 80 million that's been set aside for the first time ever, historical amount for Pacific. And part of that funding actually will go to addressing this issue. Because when we went and connected with over 3,000 people across Aotearoa, this was actually one of the top 5 issues that came through from our community. And in their words, they wanted us to confront systemic racism and discrimination in education and our schools. And so a lot of that funding, 80 million, will go towards that. The other thing that we're doing in education is we have Tapasa, a cultural competency tool that was developed by principals, Pacific principals and teachers. And that is to actually teach other teachers about how to teach our young people. Another program that goes to addressing this issue is called DIMIC, Developing Mathematical Inquiry Communities, where we utilize our own ways of doing things, including tapa, including navigation, to actually ensure that our young Pacific people can see their culture and that they know that mathematics goes right into it and that their culture is actually valued in schools. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing in this budget to address this.
Kia ora, Arizona. It's an awesome question that you ask. And if I could say that one of the things that's important about the elimination of racism is actually about seeing ourselves. And one of the important things about seeing ourselves is telling our story. One of the most proud moments that I think I've experienced as part of this government is when the announcement was made that New Zealand history would be taught in schools. And that's the real truth. That's the real history that our people have experienced. But for me as a Pacific person, it's also about telling our Pacific history of being Pacific people here in Aotearoa. And when Honourable Aupito was putting together La Langa Fau, one of the things that I can recall us having a discussion about is our history here and talking about the issue of the Dawn raids. That's a thing that still impacts us today in terms of our progression and our aspirations as Pacific people. So unless we recognise that we have got some stories to tell, we run the risk of repeating history. So we should start from that place. So that's my contribution. Kia ora.
I might just add on to that as well, Arizona. Thank you for the question. I won't talk too much. I think the other 3 have kind of covered off the government response. But I guess the one thing I will say is that you may do a search for the word and you may not come up with the word, but I guess it's what is the intention of the policies that have been put in place and whose purpose or what purpose does it serve? And when you look at some of the things that are in the budget, to me, they actually highlight a value for Māori and Pacific, ways of doing things, Māori and Pacific, initiatives, Māori and Pacific, for instance, Pacifica festivals, in a way that we may not have seen before. And so they may not state that they are to address the racism that we face across the system, but they're clear indications that we do look at things differently. And on top of that, I'd also say that it's not just about the budget. I think, as Poto has said, having the right people or diverse people in places helps to inform decisions. And one thing that you'll see is it's not just us, but more than ever, we're seeing Māori and Pacific peoples appointed across boards, across a range of different areas. And that's important because then that means that our people have a voice at those decision-making tables. So yes, it's the budget, yes, it's the policies, but it's also who's sitting in those decision-making seats.
Thank you, Arizona, and thank you, ministers. Let's move on to our next question. And Cameron, you're up. Thank you.
Kia ora, everyone. I want to extend a big me taki mata to all the ministers, the honourable ministers, for providing this space, and also to my peers on the panel. My heart is pounding and my hands are sweaty, but we'll get through this. So I just want to acknowledge that the reason why I'm so nervous is because of how much this means to be in a space like this, to come from the provinces, come from Hawke's Bay, and be able to be given this opportunity. So I hope that I'm able to properly represent the youth in New Zealand, the Pacific youth. So part of the Wellbeing Budget is that in the name itself, it says rebuilding together, right? So rebuilding towards something. And I guess the issue which I have, not the issue I have with that, but something which that brings up is, what are we rebuilding towards? Are we rebuilding towards the status quo, the pre-lockdown things, like before COVID-19? Because to me, that was rife with Pacific mental health issues, suicide, domestic violence, sexual violence. And if we are building towards that status quo, that reality, then I'm not sure that we are actively and effectively helping our communities. So I think I just wanted to have some reassurance from you about the type of future which you plan to leave behind for us and for our children and our grandchildren. Me taki.
Awesome.
Yep. Minister Robertson, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Kia ora, Cameron. Thank you so much for that question. And given that I'm responsible for the title, I'll take the first go at that. And I don't know if you've heard the phrase that a few people have talked about when we've talked about what happens after COVID-19, but it's one that I like, which is build back better. And so when we say rebuilding, we say rebuilding towards a better future for all of us. We are very aware, and actually, if I didn't get a chance to respond to Arizona. I was just going to say I'm really excited someone's looked at the budget. That's that. But when you do get a chance to maybe have a further look and have a look at the speech I gave the day that we deliver, and it's an awesome occasion for the Minister of Finance, because normally in Parliament there's limits on how long you can talk. You can only talk for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. The budget's the one speech where there's no limit. So I get to talk for as long as I want. So that day I spoke for about 40 minutes, but it's a really good listen if you do it. And when you do, you'll hear me say that we have to acknowledge that New Zealand was not some perfect paradise going into this. That actually there are lots of issues and challenges that as a country, we now get the opportunity to push the reset button on. And that doesn't happen very often in your life, that you get to do that. So issues of inequality, especially the fact that we have not made that transition to a low carbon economy where we're really taking climate change seriously, the fact that we still had Pacific and Māori unemployment much higher than unemployment in the rest of the population. So all of those issues are part of our rebuilding package, that we're actually building back a better society, and one, as my colleagues have said, where we give people voices at the table. So the answer to the question is we're rebuilding to that better New Zealand. What we now need is all of us helping shape it. And that's the part of what you're doing tonight.
All of us Pacific ministers come from Pacific families, and they are diverse, they are multi-generational, kids and grandparents live with us from time to time. So I suppose from that point of view, we sort of have a keen understanding of the challenges, our strengths, and our aspirations. And when we started developing, when we came into government, one of the first things we did was, what is our vision for ourselves? And noting that our Pacific population, over 60% are New Zealand born. This is their home, and they're not going to go anywhere. And so when we went around and started engaging, I deliberately asked MPP to target young people, because the future is yours. And what was their aspiration? And one of the things I was quite surprised by was your peers identified language and culture as being really important. When Grant led the debate around well-being, I thought that was heaven sent, because it aligns with our worldview, that well-being is, our approach to life is holistic. The focal point for us is our families, but we deal in health and education, spirituality, all that diverse needs that are there. And so Valanga Fall gave us a template to begin the rebuilding, and Grant's leadership around the wellbeing process gave us an opportunity to be engaging with the government to say we need resources to target support. We also recognize that we've had these challenges around inequities and barriers for such a long time. And to overcome that, as Carmel will tell you, it's a generational shift that requires, and it would not just government, but also within our own communities. And my final point is, when we launched the Lananga Fall in 2018, and Grant was there because his ministry, the Treasury, also laid out that Pacific Aotearoa contribution to New Zealand's GDP of $8 billion. That was an important foundational piece to lay the foundation and say, this is what we contribute. Imagine if we could eliminate all the barriers and inequities. Imagine the kind of contribution we would make then. And when in that launch, I began the conversation with our church leaders to say to them, we actually need to bring everybody on board, and we have to put aside some of our old views, if you like. I'm not trying to eliminate them. I'm saying put aside and embrace all our children and all their diversity, and recognize that they are the future, and we need to help them realize their fullest potential.
Malo, Pito. Hey, can I just quickly add, Cameron, I'm totally building on what both the previous speakers said, and Grant's idea that we need to go to better rather than normal. And I guess for me as a minister, like what I saw was some really good practice come out of the lockdown period. We got rid of a whole lot of bureaucracy, so we could move more quickly and respond to people's needs more quickly. There was much better collaboration. And so for me as a minister, it's like, how do we hold on to those things? But I'd be quite interested to know from you as young people also what you take as opportunities out of the COVID experience, what you think was actually positive that we should be looking to hold on to and harness moving forward as part of what is better. And so I don't know if you want to respond to that now, if you've got any ideas, but it would be good to hear from one of you what those things might be.
Any of our youth panelists? No?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, Cameron, sure.
Sorry, just to respond to that. Thank you, everyone, for your answers to that. I guess that the things which I think that we found really important when I talked to lots of my mentees, to the people I was connected with over lockdown, obviously there's the typical things about the strain in mental health, but I think that we really use social media as a platform, and we saw the positive engagement in that. And I think that in general education, I'm a big fan of education. Minister Salisa, I just absolutely believe in in all the things that the Wellbeing Budget stands for education. And so I think that that's the key, educating our young people, especially our Pacific young people, about what makes them tick, about what wellbeing is for them, and how they're able to look after themselves, especially in global pandemics.
I absolutely agree. And if I can, forgive me, Brian, just give an example of something that's happened in Otara. Young people in Otara, actually, during the lockdown, many of them became essential workers. They delivered food. There was a food bank, actually, that was funded from CDEM, which is the Civil Defence Emergency Management Unit. They also were funded from MSD and Youth Development. But these particular young people actually worked from a health clinic. So what you saw there was young people, and they call themselves bubblegum. They wanted to stick together to help other young people out. But you saw the barriers that Minister Cipollone spoke about. Some of those agency barriers came down. So you saw health, MSD, youth development, as well as the food bank, all working together, but it was actually young people that came through. And one of the things, actually, part of your question, you spoke about suicide and mental health. One of the highest things that they tell us is from young people is that they're worried about stress and mental health. And you would know that this is something that our government has really focused on. In fact, we committed $1.9 billion to address mental health issues. It will take us a while to train everybody up, in order to serve all of the needs. But you know, in terms of mental health services that are in schools, we've actually made sure that that is also expanded.
Thank you, Minister Salesa. Thank you, Cameron, for your awesome question and feedback. And thank you, young people, so far for your honesty in talking about your news. Don't worry about it. And to maybe reference the table remark from Minister Robertson, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Okay, then, let's move on to our next question. Fredwin, please. Thank you.
Vi te tua, maloni tatou kainga, maloni team. Grateful for this opportunity and this space to hear our voices, and understanding that, you know, youth are not only the voices of the future, we're the voices of today. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm tuning in from the glorious city of Porirua, and my question is directed to Honourable Minister Grant Robertson, who understands how legendary Aotea College is. The question is regarding the budget around I understand New Zealand's in a good place to borrow, and it's reflected in the budget. The question is, what are your thoughts on the impacts of the budget on our future taxes? Will our generation be paying off that debt? Will this generation be paying off that debt?
Yeah, thanks, Fredwin, and a really good question. The short answer for me is that it can't be about any one generation's responsibility. You know, we actually have to share this, and the real issue for me is there are probably two ways of looking at how you deal with a big recession economically like this. One is what we've seen in the past in New Zealand and some places around the world, and you might have heard the phrase austerity. So that's that you get through this by cutting everything back, by saying, well, look, we can't really afford this anymore, so we're going to cut the services back to deal with it. And we saw that when I was growing up in the late 1980s and early 90s in New Zealand. The other approach is the one that we're taking, which is actually to invest in people to get through. And so, yeah, there are going to be higher levels of debt on the government's books for the next few years, but we should share the burden of that across generations. The worst outcome for me would be young people today growing up in households where their parents don't have jobs or where there isn't enough income to put food on the table. Now, we've seen that already, and I'm not pretending that wasn't happening beforehand, but if we see more of that, that actually has a much deeper impact on those future generations than the fact that we might have a little bit more debt to deal with in the future. The real thing about the government is the size of the government means that we can borrow money in a way that individuals and households can't. So by us doing that, we take the pressure off those households and we spread those repayments over time. In terms of taxes, you know, it's really important that each government comes with a tax policy, and we'll do that for the next election. But for now, our priority is putting money in people's pockets, not taking money out of people's pockets. And so that's our investment approach, and we'll share the burden over many years to come. But one thing New Zealand will need to get used to for the next few years is that those levels of debt will be higher than we've been used to in the past. But the cost, as you just mentioned, the cost of borrowing the money at the moment is much lower. Interest rates are much lower than they were. And so even though we're borrowing a lot more money at the moment, the interest cost to us is the same as it was just a few years ago because those interest rates are lower. So basically, it's a philosophical thing. Our view is we invest now, we pay back over time, we accept a higher level of debt because as a country, we can afford it. And I just don't think the alternative, which is cutting back our services, is acceptable. So over time, we'll all be responsible, but not just one generation.
We, in last year's budget, Brian, just to carry on from Grant, we put in a significant amount of money into the Pacific Business Trust to begin the process of transforming the work that they need to do to be the economic development arm for Pacific Aotearoa and to work across the country. This year, in this budget, we've also allocated 6.5 million. And in my discussion with our Pacific business people, taxes comes up quite a bit. Now, I would say to all of our Pacific population, be careful of the debate around taxes. And I'll tell you why. We've got to adopt the principle of solidarity, because ultimately, if you look around the world, those governments who talk up the idea of cutting taxes also end up cutting public services that benefit the general public. And I've always say, and I'll say again and again to businesses, nothing wrong, love business, been in business myself, nothing wrong with making a profit. But when you made a profit, think about giving something back, because public pay for the roads which goods and services are transported. The public taxes pay for the education system that help train up the workforce. It's the public purse that pay for the police to protect all of our assets and so forth. So I'm asking you, adopt the principle of solidarity. We all contribute to ensure that everybody benefits from the economy.
Thank you very much, Fredwin. Now, just to note, what is it? We're about 43 minutes into our taranoa, and I am mindful of the time because Minister Sepuloni has to leave us soon. So with our next question, if not specifically directed to a particular minister, maybe we can begin with Minister Sepuloni and also hear from Minister Williams as well. With that, let's move on to Eteroa. Thank you so much, Eteroa. Your question, please. Oh, if you can take you off mute, thank you. Oh, you're still on mute.
Malole soifo mau malangi mama. I'm Eteroa Faile. Also, massive talofas to the honourable ministers. My question is related to STEM. So this year saw the new digital technology curriculum, and which was really exciting. But what Pacific education initiatives will be used to help not only our Pacific students, but our Pacific people? Because 4.9 is going to Taloa, but keep in mind, it's in a structured, like, kind of initiative. So when I talk about education, I'm not just meaning the lifetime of a student. I mean when the student leaves school, when they go into their desired STEM career, because I feel as if in the community, there isn't that much Pacific in the industry, especially in STEM, because there's not much education on them and how to get into the workforce. So what I'm simply saying is there Pacific education initiatives that can teach Pacific students and people about not only digital awareness, but digital fluency? Because, you know, digital fluency doesn't just mean they understand it, it means they can, in the future, end up creating projects and also applications or technologies from Pacific people to Pacific people. Malo.
I'll begin and then Carmel can add. I mean, the Tupu Aotearoa program is a whole of community approach, and it's long term. So it involves early childhood. It involves our community developing initiatives to promote and help our community be comfortable around the sciences, engineering, technology. And then we've got scholarships, which we're enabling our young people to take up. But I've also, a couple of things that changed in this budget when we boosted the money into Taloa, and that is the establishment of a digital accelerator. And the whole idea about that is to give some of people like yourself who've graduated an opportunity to explore what else is there. But in addition to that, I've asked the MPP, what we've got to do is to ensure that we've got opportunities for internship. Now, in last year's budget, 2019, we put money in over 4 years to support Tuputai. And Tuputai provided internships for government departments here in New Zealand. But under Toloa, I've asked MPP, we need to look for internships across the region as well as globally for our young people, our young graduates to take up opportunities, whether it be PIF, Pacific Island Forum, SPREP, the Crop Agency, UN agencies. But the scholarship part is also to enable you for further studies, whether it's masters or doctorates in those areas there.
Thank you, Minister Pito and Minister Sepuloni.
This is really Minister Salesa.
Yes, of course.
We're just on the broader education question, Eteroa. Is that massive investment as well in apprenticeships and trades at this budget, so 1.6 billion. And we've got to work hard as a government with our communities to make sure that we're pathwaying our Pacific people into those opportunities as well. But there's workforce shortages, those jobs are going to be there, they create huge opportunities for our community members. But that's just one of many things, and Jenny can speak more to.
So in terms of your question about digital, the Honourable Minister of Education, the Honourable Chris Hipkins, has a digital strategy, a whole digital work stream. He's also got a whole lot of investment in this area, not specifically targeting Pacific, but of course it does include our Pacific students. The other thing I want to remind all of our young people is that we also still have the fees free. So when you go in to, whether you're going into a university, a polytechnic, or a private training establishment, it's absolutely free for the first year. So you don't even need to go asking for a scholarship. The 1.6 billion that Minister Carmel Sepuloni has already covered. In addition to that, part of the 80 million that I've gotten for Pacific education will be invested in innovative things. And so providers as well as NGOs will be able to apply to the $80 million fund. And if they qualify and the Ministry of Education agree, they will also in the future be funded for things including digital technology.
Thank you, Minister Sally. So any thoughts, Minister Williams, before we continue?
Just a quick one, and that is the conversation also needs to shift to building sustainability by encouraging people to become self-employed and become business owners themselves. And I think that's a conversation we have yet to have in a fulsome way in the Pacific, but I think it's one that through Pacific Business Trust and others that we can certainly start generating some really good ideas and a great foundation for Pacific people to be business owners themselves.
Thank you, Minister Williams, and thank you so much, Iteroa, for your amazing question. After our next question, we're going to take questions. We've got 3 questions to take from our comments section. But firstly, Mr. Tupolveongo, thank you so much for your patience and your question now, please.
Bulavanaka and warm Pacific greetings to you all, especially to the 6 honourable ministers. It's such an honour and privilege to have such amazing and inspiring people of such significant status with us here today. And I'm so humble and privileged to be on the panel alongside my amazing Pacifica youth brothers and sisters. So my question is theme-based on 2 different areas. Firstly is the Pacifica business funding support. And so the first area is looking in areas of encouraging and promoting an entrepreneurial spirit by supporting new Pacifica business and new startups, whether through advisory service. And the other area was new wealth creation opportunities. And that's assistance in creating designated Pacifica sector markets to allow for goods and products imported from Pacific Islands to be exchanged here in New Zealand. So the question really is around those areas. Will the Wellbeing Budget help address and boost these platforms?
I'm mindful that Minister Sepuloni is leaving us shortly, so we'll start with Minister Sepuloni and then Minister Robertson, if we can continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Tupol. It's probably better answered by Minister Robertson, but I will say that there have already been initiatives in place to try and support Pacific peoples who have business ideas, startups that they need a little bit of funding to get going. One of those funds was actually the Generator Fund that's been offered through the Ministry for Social Development. I met a range of people that utilised that, range of people from those that were doing crafts, so our Pacifica mamas and papas who were doing crafts and wanted a little bit of support to get going so that they could actually make a business of it. Even a couple of people who had this great idea that they could teach chess in schools as part of an after-school program, so getting a little bit of funding to support them with that. And there was a range of other things. People that were doing the templates for prints and a whole lot of things. So that was just one of the funds that has been in place. I'm going back to what Minister Williams said, and you're alluding to, we do need to be much more proactive with respect to supporting Pacific people with businesses. During this COVID period, the wage subsidy has been essential for actually keeping businesses going. In fact, 4% of those that got the wage subsidy were Pacific businesses. So we need to support the ones that are already in place, as well as support those that want to get started, Pacific people who have ideas and just need a little bit of backing. But I'm sure Minister Robertson could add to that.
Oh, look, I won't say too much because I know Opito will also want to talk about the Pacific Business Trust, which is really the answer to the first part of your question to Paul, where, you know, there is specific help available there. But I really, I mean, I think what I'm hearing, and we've heard it from Fredwin as well, this what we've really got to grab hold of is the way that we support people to create their own businesses and their own wealth generation. And one of the things I've really noticed over the last few years, and doing a project on the future of work, is, and I interviewed about maybe 500 year 13 students, this is a few years ago now, around that. And apart from the fact that most people said they wanted to be a professional sports person, which is cool, but not everyone's going to get to do that. So it's really important that we don't say, what job would you like to do? It's what job would you like to create? What role would you like to actually be fulfilling in society? And can it be something that supports your community and helps you make money as well? And we need to do much more of that across society. So there's some funding in the budget, particularly for people to do e-commerce, online trading and stuff. So there's a specific fund in the budget for that. But I think more generally, that comes back to a longer conversation about what we're teaching, particularly towards the end of secondary school, about what is work and what kinds of things could you do as well as going and studying and training. And there's a big job to do. It's what we used to call careers advice, but it needs to be completely rethought to be about how we support you to actually create the jobs, not just go and fill the jobs.
Just to add, I suppose if you look into our stories upon our arrival in Aotearoa, we arrived as factory workers, predominantly by and large. And for us now here, we're not going backwards. We're looking to the future. The digital platforms gives us an opportunity to really explore, and that's why we boosted that money in Poloa. And having that digital accelerator is to give everybody an opportunity to see whether they can find the potential that the digital economy provides. For those who may not be inclined towards STEM, at the moment, we've got a package to provide free trades and apprenticeships beginning 1st of July. And when we're talking about business, sometimes we think we've got to set up this factory, but it's essentially about you working for yourself as a builder, as a plumber, as an electrician. And that's the sort of thing that we need to do. So Pacific Business Trust, we started the work to transform their role into a much broader, just simply business, but really broadening it out to an economic development agency so that it's not just business for profits, it's also community enterprises, recognizing they have a critical role to play in our community. But in this year's budget, we're also now looking to support them acquire the potentials of what's available from government departments, local government departments. I'm trying to avoid using this word that might get me into trouble, but acquiring support through our government system, which our small business tell me they're just having a difficult challenge in getting that. And so we've started that work. It's going to take a bit of time. We can't resolve all the challenges in 3 years. This is long term. We're phasing it out. My expectation of PPT is that at some stage, we're also engaging with the Pacific Island nations in terms of our trade. And we've started that work with the Pacific Reset and having this ongoing discussion. And so there is more that we need to do in that particular space.
Brian, before you move on, one thing that I think I just want to say, just in terms of the work that's happening in the community and voluntary sector space, it's about social enterprise where, and I think this resonates with Pacific people, where you can create business that actually gives back social good, that actually has an element of whether that's around work that might be in climate change or it might be in languages or culture or, building aspirations for Pacific people. But I think social enterprise is an area that we haven't explored, particularly as Pacific people, but I think it's one that really resonates with us culturally. So I look forward to advancing the work in that space.
Thank you, Minister Williams, and thank you, Ratu Tupau, for your amazing question. Thank you to all our youth panelists for your amazing questions. We have 4 questions now that we're going to direct, taken from our Facebook comment page. So we'll spend the next 10 minutes, quick fire responses. And the first question from Maria Sopoanga. Training and education is all good and well, but the need is immediate. Where is the emergency support for these students who are now supporting their families or on the job hunt to support their family? First up, yes.
I can do that one, Brian.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep, I can do that one. So in the budget, there's a hardship fund for tertiary students, a $20 million one that we set up, especially because we do recognise that a lot of tertiary students have really struggled to pay all of their bills in this immediate period of time. On top of that, there's what's called the COVID income relief payment that Minister Sepuloni's department is responsible for, that if you have lost work and if you are a student, you can get that payment on top of your student allowance or on top of your student loan living cost component. So there are just a couple of examples, and obviously if people really are struggling to be able to do that, overall MSD is the place to go. So just in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that, but that's the programs that are available.
Very good. Any other brief comments, remarks from our other ministers before we continue?
Well, you've also got the Pacifica Futures whānau water money, the 136 million that went to whānau water. Pacifica Futures will have their share from that, which they can also support families and students through that.
Awesome. Let's move on to question number 2 now from Adrian Nordstrand. If you are both of, here we go. No, Martin Mariota, my apologies. Will there be more opportunities for young Pacifica people to access internship programs into government agencies such as Tuputai, because we need more young Pacific public servants? Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, look, that program got funded last year for 4 years. We'll continue that. As I said, I'm asking MPP to explore other opportunities around the region globally. But there's also opportunities for us to partner with private sector. And there's a Tuputoa program that runs in alignment with this, and they work in the private sector. So, yep, we've started the work. We're going to grow that. We need to really basically look to see what other opportunities are available, not just in New Zealand, around the region, and at the UN level. I'm really keen for us to take advantage of any opportunities that's out there.
I can just quickly add to that, Brian. There are also other internships at MB. They call them tuputai. And there are other government departments that are also offering not only scholarships, but internships that goes with those for both Māori and Pacific. And I encourage our young people to look out for those.
Can I encourage young people to think about the public service as a career for 2 reasons. The first reason is that actually as a sustainable job, it's pretty good and the pay's not too bad. But for the second reason, you have the opportunity to influence policy. So, and we need you there at the table. A lot of the problems that we have as Pacific people is that people who are developing policy on our behalf may not actually understand us. So it's really important that, you know, it's a vital place for Pacific people to influence and make a change and actually be part of something that's long-term and sustainable. So I'm all about encouraging our people to get into the public service. So can you pass that message on to other young people? That would be really awesome.
Very
finally,
good.
Sorry, Brian. I absolutely agree with Minister Puta Williams. And I myself, actually, the reason why I'm a public servant now is I did get an internship many decades ago. I got a scholarship, internship, and now I am in cabinet.
And just to add my 2 cents, a former employee of the Department of Social Welfare in the 80s and 90s of 7 years. I very much enjoyed unlimited sick leave back in those days. And it was where I met my wife, who we are celebrating 25 years of marriage, parents to 7 children, 6 grandchildren on December the 2nd. A big shout out to my lovely Queen Alberta. Let's move on to the next question from Adrian Nordstrand. If you are both of Pacific and Māori heritage, what budget would you look at? Can you access both, and how does this work?
I can say more and more our young people are defining themselves in different ways, and that's where the 6 Bs come from, Generation 6 Bs. people who are proudly brown, brainy, bilingual, bicultural, and bold? And the answer is absolutely. I know when I'm traveling around the country and I talk to the whānau order out in the regions, yep, they've got Pacific peoples accessing support there. And similarly with Pacific Futures, it's the way our communities are also working. All those health providers, our social providers on the ground, they're not differentiating, they're just acknowledging they're all members of our community.
Very good. Well, we're going to wrap up that portion of this evening's panel. And what we're going to do now, we're going to go back to our youth for final thoughts and maybe final challenges to our ministers this evening. Shall we start again, firstly, with Arizona? Final thoughts from you, young lady?
Final thoughts. I definitely, again, say thank you to the ministers for their time this evening. I feel like we've just only scratched the surface, if I'm being completely honest. And I understand we're not going to solve the world's problems or the nation's problems in an hour. I'd love if we could, but I totally understand that that's completely out of our grasp. But I would like to, I guess, challenge our ministers to continue to honour what you have said around being accountable for the treaty, keeping our human rights at the forefront of your decisions, but also when you say that young people are at the core of our future, let that be reflected in everything that you are doing and that you continue to release policy-wise. We've talked about policy a lot tonight and how that controls and helps dictate our future. So in the ways that you would always say, oh, we're a message away, or please email us your thoughts, come back to us too. We are waiting and we are almost like tugging at the seams to let us in there. So we are just as much a message away, if not would love to be at that table a lot more, and never on the menu as we have really discussed this evening. But thank you very much. And I hope that this is only the beginning of what we can create a real good, trustworthy relationship. Appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arizona. Cameron, please.
Final thoughts. I guess I have, just building off what Arizona said, I think that it's really important. I guess a challenge is to continually stretch yourself and get out of your comfort zone and talk to youth. I can understand if it would be like uncomfortable for you, because it's just as uncomfortable for us to come to you. And so I think that it's coming from a place of I guess privilege, being in these positions of high power within our country. I think it's really important to go to sometimes approach those of us who tend to slip through the cracks, approach the LGBTQ+ community, my community. I think it's really important to go to the provinces, see those people who are end up falling through the cracks and end up missing out on these amazing opportunities. And just a last thing, unrelated to this, shout out to my mentees who have their exams tomorrow, and shout out to all the students, all the tertiary students and high school students who are had to go through COVID-19, plus their personal issues, and now they're facing exams. You're the real ones, and I'm proud of you all. Me taki mata.
Me taki mata, Cam, and can I say, all of our youth panelists, you guys are the real ones. Fredwin Kisona, final thoughts, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am honestly, I'm honoured for this experience. I would encourage more of it, as Arizona touched on. Another thing I would encourage is to not underestimate the platform of the Pacifica churches. I think that's an opportunity that is not fully tapped into yet, and I think we can maximize that a bit more. Also, if we could have more of these discussions, because this is definitely heading in the right direction, that will be great for us all. Kudos to everyone here and those in the comment section, and malo tokelau, malo porirua. Just want to throw that in.
P-Town for life, mano ni. Thank you so much, Fredwin. And Tupou, oh sorry, Eteroa, lovely young lady, thank you.
Bless. Also, my last thoughts would be to the ministers to have a magnifying glass on the STEM community, especially for Pacifica. If you really, really want to see it, there's not enough. And I know people say it, but I really need more action for our communities, because we talk about internships, but will they be STEM related? Will they be ones that can career them out into private sectors? because, you know, I think, you know, for someone that is in STEM, it's hard not to see many of us. And I really plead that you keep an eye out for our Pacifica in STEM, because it's not just technology, it's the science, the engineering, and the mathematics. And I think it's important because, you know, we always say it's a digital age, but how can we say it when our communities are not there? Because personally, we're not ready. Not a lot of us, our communities are ready. And I think it's important that we put it in action and we get them ready so that when the time does come, we'll see all these Bible apps, all these church services run by our own people. So that's my feedback and my take home for all of us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Etiroa, for that magnified final remarks. Very good indeed. And Ratu, Tupau Vayongo, finally, please.
Uncle Brian, final thoughts and words. I just want to thank the ministers, honourable ministers, for joining us and answering our questions. I guess most of it. For my case was Pacifica business and support as well for in the Pacifica sector market as well, creating markets. I guess you guys really explained through the budget and through the support on that. So I really appreciate your feedback. And I believe that we are Pacifica people are entrepreneurs by nature. So it's good to see that this sector and this market is still growing. So thank you very much, Brian, everyone, for this opportunity.
And before I hand over to the Minister for Pacific Peoples for final remarks, young people, I very much appreciate your time this evening, and you have very much represented ably the collective voice of our New Zealand Pacifica youth. And to quote a well-known poet, I believe that children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Minister for Pacific Peoples, I don't worry about the thumb because we're already 10 minutes over anyway. So, Minister for Pacific Peoples, the Honourable Alpito Toisu Soto Faisal William Seal, final thoughts, please.
I'm going to invite the Honourable Grant Robertson and my ministerial colleagues to all have a final word, and then I'll round things off.
Look, thank you, Brian. And my main thank you is to not only those who are watching and on Facebook and commenting, but particularly to our youth panelists. All of your questions were ones that are hugely important to our future. And one of the things I've learned over a really long period of time working in and around politics and in and around youth work as well in earlier years is that it's actually what Fredwin said at the start. It's not about the leaders of our future, it's the leaders of today. And you've shown that today. And Cameron, can I just make a special shout out to you and your reference to the importance of the LGBTQ plus community. I'm also a member of that community, and I think it's really important that we recognise not just that the diversity of our society is something that we should all accept, but actually we should embrace, and that we should make it part of our future as part of our strength. So I want to especially acknowledge you today for bringing that up. Thank you again. Whapatau lava.
Minister Salisa, you're on mute. And now you're off air. Oh.
Malo, Peter Brian, you'd think that having done Zoom many times that I'd know how to actually use it. Apologies for that. I want to actually just thank all of our panelists. Thank you for being a part of tonight. Thank you for all of your questions, really crucial questions to make us think of things that we may not have covered. Thanks also for the challenges that you've left with us to take back. And there are things there that you've actually, made us think maybe there are things that we could do in a better way. One of the challenges also that I heard from you is let's build things better. These are words from our Minister of Finance, but it's also words that's come through loud and clear from our young people. It's clear that they don't want to go back to what it was like pre-COVID. They want to go back to building an even better future. Thank you.
Minister Williams, thank you. Minister Salisa.
I want to thank you for the way you've been so respectful and sharing so vulnerable with your questions. And I think that's a mark of just how and what good shape our community is, that we take these opportunities, we don't squander them. But in the same way, as you were nervous and anxious, so was I, and so were we all, that we that you can feel confident that we are finding a pathway that makes sense to you and makes sense to all of us. So I want to thank you for that confidence, but also I want to thank you for the support that you've given our nation over the last very difficult few months, that none of our ability to thrive as a community can happen without all of us playing our part. And you've given us some real insight into ensuring we recognise that you play a huge part in our ability to come through this well and to be the best place in the world to live in and to grow. So thank you very much for all that you've contributed tonight.
Minister Seal, morning.
Look, can I just echo what my colleagues have said and just reiterate our gratitude for your time and obviously for the thinking that went into engaging with us and the questions you've asked. Your questions have been provocative and they've caused us to pause and reflect a little bit about what we are actually doing. But I can assure you with some confidence that having started the work, there is much, much more to do. And we're excited that we've been able to do it. But I sense also the impatience and the need of accelerating it and working at pace. I just want to say to you that in 1993 was the first time we had the first Pacific person in Parliament. And it took a while. But today you have 6 members of Parliament of Pacific heritage. And so these things do take a bit of time, but there is the multiplier effect that will eventually happen. I see us, Eteroa, as really leading in that STEM, that digital economy. But that's going to take a bit of time. I think if you're the only one there, then we need to accelerate how to get more people into that space. But I promise you, as I've promised the regions, that COVID-19 gave us this new opportunity to be engaging on these digital platforms. So I've made a commitment to the regions that every quarter I will meet with them on digital platforms. I'm going to do that with you. I want to also bring everybody on a national basis, at least biannually, to keep our communities together, to make sure that we are being in touch with you, because the rebuilding of Aotearoa New Zealand is going to take a bit of time. And I don't want any of our communities missing out. And my final thing is we go back to our culture and look for stories that help us strengthen us as we move forward. Grant yesterday used waka e noa. We are all on the same canoe together as peoples of Aotearoa New Zealand. In my Samoan culture, there's a number of sayings that also reaffirms that. And one which I'll share with you, ele sua le lolo I se popo e tasi. You cannot have enough coconut oil with only one coconut. You need a lot of coconuts. And I think that's what we've got to do here, is work together for the sake of our community and be part of the rebuilding of Aotearoa New Zealand. Me taki ma'ata, whaftai tele. Thank you very much for your contribution tonight.
Thank you so much. Momentarily, I was going to say thank you, Minister Coconut, but no, not at all. With that, we would like to firstly thank our ministers. Firstly, the Minister for Finance, the Honourable Grant Robertson, Lang Mei Yaralam Rik, Minister for Pacific Peoples, the Honourable Alpito Toisulu to Faisal William Seal, Mano Soifula Fionga Alpito, Associate Minister for Education, the Honourable Jenny Salesa, Mano Alpito, Tupela Moe Popo, Minister for Social Development, the Honourable Carmel Sepuloni, and Minister for Community and Voluntary Sector, the Honourable Poto Williams, Meitaki Maata, Ekia Manuia, and to our amazing youth leaders this evening, Arizona Ledger, Cameron Young, Fredwin Kisona, Eteroa Lafaele, Atupo Aveongo. We salute you, young people. You are tomorrow's leaders today. It's a good one. Oh, I like that. And
can I interrupt?
You had your final remarks, though, Minister. Sorry, because we've got to close. No, okay, then.
Can we just give a silent word clap of hands for Brian being our MC and for the ministry for organising this?
Please don't stop. Teamwork does make the dream work. And we are going to finish in prayer. But once again, a very big thank you on behalf of the Ministry for Pacific Peoples, Pacific Media Network, and Tangata Pasifika. And please make sure to join us tomorrow for our final session, Friday the 12th of June, between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. on the 531 PI Facebook page, which will look at business, hosted once again by the incredible Andre Afamasanga. So I'm going to close us in prayer. Please, can we all close our eyes and please honor the Lord? Thank you. Thank you, Father, for this evening. Thank you for our young people. Thank you for our ministers. And thank you for an amazing time, Father. We just commit our young people to you. We thank you for the gifts and the talents that you've blessed them with. And Father, all the families represented this evening, we thank you for our online viewers as well. And just thank you for this very, very important talanoa. As we continue or go our separate ways this evening, we pray your blessings, your covering in Jesus' name. Amen. And my very final thoughts, young people, historically voter turnout amongst our youth and Pasifika in general has been low. The fervour, the passion, the determination with which you are currently highlighting injustice, in all parts of the world, can I please ask that you employ that same passion, that same determination, that same fervour come election day 2020 and have your say at the polling booth. With that, God bless, to Whāsui Fua, and remember, look after one another. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bless you, bless you, bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Grant and Poto and Jenny. And what are we going to do with you?
You're the one that keeps on inviting me back, so it's not my fault. Okay.